is going to give a self-introduction, and that's icebreaker speech, by trying to share with us his background as well as the stories behind his name. And that speaker is Scott. And let's welcome Scott.
Toastmaster. I don't know if it's really true, but I like to believe that you can know a lot about a person just by hearing their name. Right? At the very least, you get an impression of that person. For instance, my wife and I are expecting a baby girl in October. And so as you might expect right now, we're throwing around different names, thinking of different girl names, cute names, old names, whatever. And once in a while a name will come up like, say, Elizabeth. And I'll say, no, we can't do Elizabeth. I dated a girl in high school named Elizabeth. That name is off limits. I don't want her to grow up and be like the girl I dated. Now, I think you all know what I'm talking about. When you know a person, you have an association with that person, there is always an association with names. And this is why people often name their kids after Harry Truman or other individuals, right? Want to avoid the controversial names, of course. So, what does this have to do with me? My name is Matthew Scott Leonard. For the interest of time, because I could really talk about this for hours. I love talking about my name because I love my name. I'm so vain. But for the interest of time, I'm going to focus on my middle name, which is Scott, which is the name I'm known by. Why do I go by my middle name? My parents wanted to call me Scotty, but they thought that Scott Matthew Leonard sounded ridiculous. So they called me Scott as my middle name, and then just referred to me as Scott all the time. No one ever calls me Matthew. Why did my parents want to call me Scotty? It's very simple. I am named after my dog's horse. I'm sorry, I'm named after my dad's horse. I am named after the dog comes later. I'm named after my dad's horse, right? Which people laugh at. You guys are laughing right now, but I think it's a great honor, actually. My dad grew up in central Utah on a farm, and as a kid he had a horse named Scotty. And the horse was loyal, the horse was dependable, and he ate a lot. I think that's a lot like me. So they named me Scotty after my dad's horse. What else? If you were to go and look at the name Scott, there is a certain etymology about it. Where does Scott come from? Anyone know? Where the name Scott comes from? Can anyone guess?
Scotland.
Scotland, yes. Okay. So the word Scot appears maybe in the 7th century Old English. The word Scotty appears, and it's referring to a people in Ireland, in Gael. G-A-E-L, Gael, I think that's what it's spelled. Yeah. So they weren't actually Scottish at the time. But over time, in other Old English references, there were Scotus and Scuta, referring to the people who migrated from Ireland to the northern English Isles, which is present-day Scotland. And the name Scuta, or Scotus, actually refers to a meaning of restless wanderer. Restless wanderers. So you can imagine the Scottish people we're seeing as wanderers, wandering from Ireland to Scotland. What does that have to do with me? I ran away from home 3 times before my 4th birthday. Okay? I was set on the stage pretty early. Okay? The first time, my mom was on the phone. I was a little toddler, and I just went right out the front door. And the milkman found me 2 kilometers later and brought me home. Okay? Another time I decided I wanted to go trick-or-treating in the middle of March. And so I grabbed a bag and went down the street going trick-or-treating. One time I'd like to tell you about really quickly is when I was 2.5 years old, I ran away from home yet again. I am the 2nd youngest of 8 children, and at 2.5 years old I was, well, the youngest of 7. It was a Sunday morning, and as you can imagine, keeping track of 7 kids is really difficult, so my mom put me on the back porch with the dog, Sabrina, and told my sister to watch me. My sister, being 10 years old, was easily distracted, and off I went into the woods with the dog. Now, you can imagine this was a pretty serious situation. All hell broke loose. My parents went to the church and brought the church people home, and they were all looking for me. They called the police. They had everybody out looking for this 2.5-year-old kid. My neighbor, Mr. Schultz, had a dog named Moose. And Moose was an excellent tracker. He would take Moose up into Canada, and they would track for all kinds of animals. You know, we lived in Seattle, so Canada was pretty easy to get to. pretty rural area in Seattle too. So Moose actually caught my scent. My dad gave him a pillowcase and a sock, and Moose kind of got a sense of what I smelled like and went out into the forest and was tracking me. They found little tracks, little kid tracks next to little dog tracks, and came upon me several miles away from home in the back of a pasture. And the dog was sopping wet, and I was wet up to my ankles, which was strange because the dog was twice my size. And we somehow managed to cross the stream, and there I was in the back of the pasture. So it was kind of an interesting story, and I would say it might say something a little bit of something about me. What is that? I like to think that as the Irish Scots migrated from the island of Ireland over to the island of England, present-day Scotland, I also sort of migrated across the Pacific Ocean from Seattle to Hong Kong. And I don't feel like I'm really done wandering yet. You know, I'd like to go around and see some other places. You know, bring the kids along when I have them. But that's a little bit about me. I feel like I'm a bit of a wanderer, just like my name might suggest. So back to you.